Good morning, City Life Church family and everybody who's joining us for this special weekend. Welcome and happy Easter. We are so excited to celebrate a very special weekend with you all.
Happy Easter. Hey guys, I just want to take a minute as we begin and acknowledge the bunny in the room. You know, this is a very different Easter for the church to celebrate, isn't it? This is probably the first time in the history of the church that globally we've all been sequestered and limited by our expression and our celebration of how we come together to acknowledge the resurrection life of Jesus. And, you know, that can be hard, but I want to say today, we don't have to take a defeatist attitude this morning. There is much to celebrate.
And there is an opportunity in this obstacle. Can we encourage you to not just be a spectator and observe this morning,
so good.
but to jump in, lean in. When we worship, stand up and sing out loud with us. Leave some comments or thoughts on the live feed so that we know that you're with us and you're celebrating this morning.
And if you're new or newer to us today, I just want to say how happy we are that you've joined us here for Church Online. You know, everything we do as a church is to connect with people who are discovering and asking questions and growing in their relationship and understanding of who Jesus is and what life with him is like. We'd love the opportunity to get to know you more. You can add a comment and say, hey, I'm brand new in the comment feed this morning. Even better, if you could, on a separate device, navigate to thisiscitylife.com/next steps, click on the connect link and let us know who you are and a little bit about how we can serve you. There's so many great things happening here in the City Life community. Even though we're physically distant, we are relationally more committed than ever, and we'd love to bring you in on that journey with us here today.
This morning, we've created a fantastic Church Online experience where we can really celebrate who Jesus is and what he's done for each of us. We've asked a couple of our in-house artists to put together a couple of different things, and they'll be sharing that this morning. We know that each one of these creative expressions will speak to everyone to see Jesus in a fresh and insightful new way this morning. So we want to wish you a happy Easter from our family to yours. And also, let's all stand up. Let's get ready to go. And we're going to take some time to worship Jesus together.
Let's go, guys. Happy Easter.
Good morning, church. Why don't you join with us this morning? You have come, we have found life everlasting. Now alive to know your freedom, never ending. You alone made a way for us in your love. You are life, I'm living in
We stood accused, shamed and broken, held by sin in an abyss of self-destruction, the gap too large to cross, the chasm too wide to fill, seemingly. When sacrifices fell short, we stood too far from forgiveness, too far fallen from grace. The old system, insufficient, incomplete, exhausted. Blood from a lamb that could no longer purify, sanctify, clarify. We stood condemned to fear, seemingly. Yet he held out healing in his hands, and as the nails pierced, he spoke life in the face of death. Surely you will be with me in paradise. It is finished. And as a cloud of darkness fell over the sky, when despair entered our hearts, the King of heaven had been conquered, seemingly. It is finished. His death, so death could no longer hold us, and the fear that once held us was no more. The empty tomb, a symbol of a chasm filled. He for whom you are searching, he is now gone. The empty tomb, empty but whole, a promise of an eternity of freedom. Suddenly, slavery was not our only option, but adoption. No longer slaves, but children. See his hands, his feet. Touch them. Stand close to forgiveness's feet and feel his love. This lamb was not overcome, could not, would not be overcome. The perfect lamb came to an imperfect world, giving the ultimate sacrifice. And the blood of this perfect lamb could not only clarify, purify, sanctify, but it rectified our ailments, setting us in rightness with the Father. The blood spilled out for us and left magnified, breathing new life into our weary bones that were once given a death sentence, a sentence inescapable, seemingly. This story is all the more true today. The Lord who was, is, and is to come what may, continues to sit glorified at the right hand of his Father, our Father. Prepare way for the King, the ultimate invitation to sit at his feet. All because he is risen. He is risen forevermore. This is a story of redemption, of love and grace, of prophecy fulfilled, of a love so deep. So make way for the King who brings life to death, who breathes life into our bones, certainly. Daughter, son, rise up, for he is risen. Certainly, he is risen indeed.
He has risen. Those three incredible words really do change everything. They echo through the halls of history and into this moment today. You know, this is Easter Sunday. For us as followers of Jesus, it is like Super Bowl Sunday. It is the thing to which everything else points. Now, don't get me wrong, I love all things Easter. I love the bunny, the Easter egg hunts, I like the chocolate, I enjoy the ham, the Zoom calls with friends and family this year. I even enjoy the cheesy Christian memes, and I thought I would show you, this is my favorite one right here. But for me, Easter isn't a holiday, it's the holiday. It's the pivot point between who I was and who I've become. It has marked who I will be for all of my life. See those three words, he has risen? It changes everything for me. And really, whether we realize it or not, it changes everything for all of us. So whoever you are, wherever you are at in your spiritual understanding of who Jesus is, whether you're a skeptic or a seeker, it doesn't matter. I'm so glad that you're here and have joined us today. This morning, I want to take a closer look at the account in the Bible that we learned about and we read about or heard about in the video we just watched. I'm going to look at it from a couple of different authors' perspectives who were alive during the days of Jesus to give us a fuller perspective of what really happened in the story. Let's look at Mark chapter 16 and verse 1 together. It says this, "When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salem bought spices so that they might go and anoint him," speaking of Jesus. "And very early on that first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb." As I was reading this story, it occurred to me that for a story to connect with my heart and soul, whether it's a movie or a great book, I have to know a little something about these characters that I'm reading about. Who were these women, these three women that were coming to help prepare Jesus' body for its final burial? Let me tell you a little bit about them. First of all, the Bible doesn't tell us a lot, but we can extrapolate a couple of details. Mary Magdalene wasn't, contrary to tradition, a prostitute. She actually was a woman from a region called Magdala, Mary Magdalene. She came along the scenes early in Jesus' ministry and was healed and set free from 7 demonic spirits. Now, we don't know exactly what that manifested itself as, whether she was physically sick, whether she was tormented, whether she felt mental anxiety, she struggled with self-harm or whatever. We've seen all of those as examples of how demonic oppression affects a human being in the Bible. But we do know that when she encountered Jesus, something powerful happened. She was delivered and became something else entirely, so much so that she became a loyal disciple of Jesus. In fact, when the Bible lists the female disciples of Jesus, she's always listed first, which is significant. It suggests to us that Mary was a leader of the female disciples. She was a woman to be reckoned with. Secondary texts even suggest that after Jesus' resurrection and ascension into heaven, that Mary actually became an apostle, that she went preaching, teaching, and establishing churches. Listen, this was a powerful CEO type person. And if you're here today and you've had a lot of success, you've risen up from the bootstraps of your origins, you've walked past things that have tried to hold you back, and you've moved into something, this story has you in mind. You are the Mary Magdalene. This next woman, Mary, must have been a popular name. Mary, the mother of James. Sadly, that's literally all we know about this Mary. She had a son. His name was James. And as I thought about that and how that relates to the story and connecting with this character, I thought about all of the people in life who feel overlooked, who feel like nobody really notices them or appreciates them for who they are. That they always seem to not be picked first or appreciated fully for what they offer and what they contribute. Listen, if you're here today with me on Church Online and you feel that way sometimes in life, you can connect with this story and what happens next. Last, we have this woman named Salem. We know that Salem was the mother of James and John, 2 of Jesus' disciples who were known as the sons of thunder. How would you like being the mom of the sons of thunder? Man, that's got to be a tough job right there. This was a no-nonsense woman. She had a tough life raising those sons of thunder. But we know she loved her boys, and she loved them something fierce, because she went to Jesus a few chapters earlier and said, hey, when you rule, you better save the seat to your left and to your right for my boys, my James and my John. Man, this was a woman who fought passionately for her sons. But she was known in the context of these two other people, James and John, her sons. And sometimes maybe you're here today and maybe you can connect with that. Maybe you're watching church online because somebody extended an invitation to you and you're kind of here as a secondary kind of source. You wouldn't have chosen to come here yourself, but you're here by the invitation of someone else, or you're in the sort of the shadow or connected to someone else. I want to say welcome to you, and I'm so glad you're here. You're in this Easter account too. And so here are these three women. They come into this moment and they're preparing Jesus' body for burial. But here's one other thing you should know about them. You know, these three women in Mark chapter 15, we learn that every one of Jesus' followers eventually betrays him and walks away from him in his moment of crucifixion. But the scripture specifically records that these three women remained. Listen, these weren't weak-willed, second-class citizens. These were powerful, loyal, devoted followers of Jesus who had just seen all of their hopes and dreams crucified with their Lord. The scripture goes on, and it says, and they were saying to one another, who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb? And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled back. It was very large. When I read this in preparation for this morning, I saw a character I've never really seen in this story before. This stone. Believe it or not, I think this stone speaks to us today. This stone is really interesting. See, in Matthew 27, we learn that the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, who Jesus spoke very poorly of, actually commanded that a stone be rolled in front of the tomb where Jesus' body was, so that it would prevent any of his followers coming, stealing his body and faking his resurrection. They were so intent on making sure his body was not removed that they actually placed guards in front of this heavy stone in front of the tomb to make sure there was no way that this resurrection account could be faked in any way. And yet, when these women show up to this space, worried about how they're going to remove this massive stone, this obstacle between them and Jesus, incapable of moving it in their own strength, to their surprise, the stone is already gone. See, the stone preaches the whole story of the gospel message, because nothing separates us anymore from God. All our good intentions and effort to get back to God, to know him and experience him, to reconcile our lack of purpose and the weight of our mistakes, it cannot move that stone, that thing that separates us between God and us. The Bible calls it sin. It's not living an awful life, but it's not living a perfect life. See, God's perfection is our standard, and we can't meet that standard on our own strength. And so Jesus does for us supernaturally what we cannot do for ourselves naturally, you guys. He rolls away the stone of our sin through his life and his death and his resurrection. It's too good to be true. These women show up expecting an obstacle in their way, not knowing how they'll move it, but God does the work for them. And Jesus has done the work for you. A couple years ago, Stephanie and I, when we were living in the suburbs, we bought a house, and the backyard hadn't been fully landscaped. And so one spring, we decided we were going to set out on the task of finishing the landscaping in the backyard. So we got some shovels one spring afternoon, and we got out there and we started to shove the shovels into the ground and try to break up this really thick packed dirt that was full of rocks and debris and construction residue. And it was tough work. We worked all afternoon, and very quickly we realized we had bitten off way more than we could ever accomplish. By the end of that afternoon, we were sweaty, we were tired, we were dirty, and we had finished about 6 feet by 2 feet plot. We had tons more to do. We were so discouraged. And as we were packing up for the day, our neighbor came over and he said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And we explained the vision we had for our yard. And he said, hey, I'll be right back. And 3 minutes later, he rolled into his backyard with this big backhoe with a rototiller attachment. And in 15 minutes, he not only chewed up every piece of my backyard that needed to be broken up, but that same space that took me all afternoon with Stephanie was covered again in mere moments. See, sometimes we need help, and we can't do it on our own. Sometimes what we want to do and the vision we have for our life, we can't achieve it in our own strength and capacity. We don't have the tools and we don't have the ability. We need something greater than ourselves, and that is the gospel story. That is the amazing news of Jesus, friends, that he did for us what we could not do for ourselves. See, nothing separates us anymore. The story goes on and it says this, and entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe. We learned this was an angel in some of the other accounts. And they were alarmed. And he said to them, do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. Are you ready for this? He has risen. There's those 3 words again. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. See, these women showed up expecting a dead body. And they'd brought spices according to their cultural custom to respectfully prepare and bury the body and to say a final goodbye to this person in whom they had hung all their faith and all of their hope. And instead, they found an empty grave. Their confusion in this moment is compounded by the terror they feel in this moment of meeting this angelic being. And then it's increased by this message that Jesus is no longer present. He is not here. He has risen. Those 3 words. See, these women showed up expecting one thing, and they encountered something else entirely. They expected death, but they discovered life. And maybe that's like you here today. Can I encourage you to look again at the empty grave? Look again at Jesus. Maybe you have a certain understanding of who Jesus is. Maybe you think he's a crutch. Maybe you think he's an unnecessary reality of an evolved society. Maybe he's just a tradition, an old belief, a picture in a stained glass window that's nice but has no relevance to you today. Maybe he's one of many ways to God. I don't know what your thinking is. Maybe you've been around for a while and you think you've got this whole relationship with God thing figured out. You know all the stories and all the rules and how everything is supposed to go. And for you, it's just become sort of familiar, routine. And if you were really honest, maybe a little bit flat. Can I encourage you to take another look? Look again at the empty tomb. Look again at the God who surprises you with his untamed and unconditional love. Look again. Because Jesus is showing up this Easter, I believe, in an unexpected way, in your living room right now. He's showing up. And he means to confront our perceptions. He means to challenge our ideologies. He wants to change our mindsets, our familiarity, and remind us again of who he is. Look again. He doesn't fit into our neat little boxes. He's breaking out of our paradigms, and he wants you to see him for who he is, greater than you could have ever imagined. Look again. John's gospel gives us some further clarity into what happens next in the encounter between Mary Magdalene and Jesus. And it says this in John 20, verse 14. Having said this, she, Mary, turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." And then Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Mary, maybe because of the early hour of the day and the sun still rising, maybe because of the tears in her eyes, maybe because when Jesus was resurrected, his body was similar to what it was, but yet distinct in some new way. Mary doesn't recognize Jesus at first here. She actually thinks he's the gardener, even though she knew him. She thinks he was someone else. And in her confusion, Jesus replies to her, "Woman," kind of the equivalent of a "hey you," this generic sort of somebody to get her attention. And she essentially says, "Sir," another generic, "Hey, you, please tell me, do you know where Jesus is?" And then he says something so simple, so profound, and so powerful. It's the one word that the gospel story hinges on. And it's simply this: Mary. He says her name. And in that moment, he helps us understand something about who he is and his thoughts towards us. See, Jesus doesn't come to us as a mass of people, as one of many, as somebody who's taken a number and waiting in some sort of long line for service. No, he comes to us personally, individually. He knows us and loves us and cares about us literally by name. Jesus today knows your name wherever you're sitting today. Tom, Kathy, Derek. He knows your name. Tanner. He knows your name. Brittany. He sees you. Damien and Jamie and Rick and Luke. He knows your name. The power of the resurrection and its implication for us today is this: you are known personally and loved personally by God. It's not just for humanity that Jesus died. Oh, sure, the message is, but if you think it's just for an us, you're missing the point. It's for a you. And Jesus would come to you today wherever you're at, and I would believe today in faith that he is speaking your name. He knows your name. Today he sees you, and he knows you, and he loves you. It doesn't matter your confusion or opinion or mistakes. It doesn't matter the shame you carry or the guilt you carry or the things done to you that you think might stand in the way of you being good enough to get to God. That's not the point. Every one of us isn't good enough. That's why Jesus came, so that he could call your name. And friend, let me assure you today, wherever you are, whatever your story, he is calling your name. He loves you personally. He sees you personally. His love is for you personally. That's the story of Easter. Yeah, it's about all of us. But if we don't personalize it and make it about me, it doesn't become real. And it doesn't require a response. See, the fact that Jesus said her name, Mary, gives us an indicator that he would come today to speak to each one of us individually. Mary's response is interesting. She says this word, Rabboni. You can study out the Jewish words for teacher. There were actually 3 different words that were used to describe different levels of teachers. The first word is rab, and it's like the first level of teachers, the first level of influencers. The second word is rabbi. Maybe you've heard that word before. It's the next level of leaders and influencers, people who would have a following and people would follow after. But then there was this third level, this word Rabboni, and it was reserved for the most revered and respected teachers of the day. And when Jesus says Mary's name, her response is Rabboni, my revered and esteemed teacher. Her response is personal, just like his invitation is personal. And that is the message of the resurrection. That is the hope that each one of us puts our confidence in or we walk away from. Today, as we reflect on the grace of Jesus, on the resurrection power of God to deal with and resolve our sin and roll away the stone of our own sinfulness so that we can come into right relationship with God, so we can look again and see him for who he is, untamed and powerful and all-loving toward us. If we would take time in this moment, I'm going to invite my friend Elijah to perform a song that he wrote about the name of Jesus and the power in his name. And as he does, would you reflect on what your response might be this Easter to an empty grave and an invitation to a God who's speaking your name?
Be exalted Oh, behold the beauty of his grace. He is reigning over all. From the heavens to the earth below. There is power in the name that has broken every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. We will triumph in the name, for he's risen from the grave. There is power in the name of Jesus. You are sovereign, you are strong. There is nothing that can stop our God. You alone are the faithful one, and every promise that you said was done, and every promise that you said will come. There's power in the name that has broken every chain. There's power in the name of Jesus. We will triumph in the name, for he's risen from the grave. There's power in the name of Jesus. There is none stronger, there is none greater. Holy as the Lord, holy as the Lord, and all of the glory, forever worthy. Holy as the Lord, holy as the Lord, and there is none stronger, there is none greater. Holy as the Lord, holy as the Lord, and all of the glory, you're forever worthy. Holy as the Lord, holy as the Lord. There is power in the name that has broken every chain. There's power in the name of Jesus. We will triumph in the name, for he's risen from the grave. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus.
Friend, if you're here today and you've been walking with Jesus for a little while, I believe this Easter, God wants to just absolutely visit you in a fresh and a new way. Maybe things have grown a little predictable, a little routine. If you were really honest with me, maybe just a little flat. And I want to say to you today, I believe that if you would look again at that empty grave and take time to just reflect on the greatness of God, that he would cause that love he has for you to just fire up in a fresh revelation in your moment and in your space this morning. So God, I pray for each person today. I thank you for them. Those who already follow you, who maybe have gotten caught up in predictable routines or distracted by other priorities. God, would you bring us back to that wonder of a God who gave his life for us, a God who came in flesh and lived a perfect life and died a horrific death so that we could live and be free. God, restore to us the joy of our salvation. Amen. Hey, if you're here today and maybe this is the first time you've heard about the story of Jesus in this way, maybe you're here today and you've heard sitting there a sense that Jesus is calling your name. My friend, I would ask you today, what is your response going to be? Will it be like Mary's, who invites Jesus to take lordship and to sit under him as a teacher and to grow in understanding and relationship with him? Or is it going to be like so many today who've made the mistake to walk away and continue to try to find life in their own futile attempts? Friends, you were designed for relationship with God. And if you're here today and you'd like to begin a relationship with him, it doesn't mean you don't have to have any questions or doubts. It means that in faith, you're stepping past those today to say, God, I want to start a new chapter of my life with you at the head of it. If you would like to do that today, if you'd like to respond in the same spirit that Mary did, would you just pray after me? You can say this out loud wherever you're at. Say, Jesus, thank you for your life, for your death, for your resurrection. Thank you for an empty tomb. And thank you for calling my name. Come into my heart. Forgive my sin. Make me brand new and teach me to live the way you designed me to. Friend, if you prayed that prayer today, let me tell you, this Easter is a birthday to remember. It's a brand new beginning for you. And I can tell you, come on, City Lifers, we have a tradition. Anytime anybody makes a decision to follow Jesus, we cheer loudly and rowdily, and we're doing that for you from our living rooms today. Hey, listen, as we end this Easter service, I think there's no better moment for us to conclude with than worship. Would you join us as we sing one more song of worship? Why don't you stand to your feet wherever you are, and let's sing together this beautiful song that celebrates Jesus' death and resurrection together.
I cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see his wounds, his hands, his feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid him down in Joseph's tomb, the entrance sealed by heavy stone. Messiah still is all alone. And oh, praise the name of the Lord.
just a few final details before we say goodbye. Make sure you get to our website. This is citylife.com/nextsteps. Has everything you need to connect with us, especially if you made a decision to follow Jesus today. We want to hear from you. Click on that connect link and let us know a little bit about you. We will follow up and connect with you shortly. Tell us what we can do to serve you and where you're at. We're excited to get to know you and connect you with the City Life family. We have amazing life groups happening all through the city, and our care team, in response to the COVID-19 virus, is activated and mobilized, not only to meet needs, but to help people who'd like to meet needs get connected. So check that tab out as well. I also want to invite all of our City Life Church family to consider continuing to give to City Life during this really unprecedented time. We are so thankful that we have a church that gives by conviction and not convenience, and we want to thank you for being faithful to that conviction as we move forward. It's your giving and your generosity that allows us to meet the needs of our community at this time and to respond and be ready and proactive in helping serve those who are the most vulnerable and most needy. We're excited about carrying that on. Lastly, my last announcement is for all of our City Life kids. If you haven't watched this weekend's kids materials, make sure you get to our website. And this morning, before Church Online began, we sent out a bunch of Easter ninjas to all of our families. And if you kids go get your parents and go to your front doors, we've got some surprises waiting for you at your doorstep. Some Easter treats from us to you. We love you, we miss you, and we can't wait to see you again. Happy Easter to our kids. Happy Easter to you all. Enjoy your time with friends and family. Stay safe, and God bless. We'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.